for one reason or another, and the state is supporting that in those cases, but the propensity of hydrogen stations are here.
Right.
And then some of the manufacturers are saying, hey, we're going to make a bet on hydrogen, or we're going to make a bet on battery electric, and some may be the same company, like Kia and Hyundai may be splitting their vote. So there's different things. So I think it's interesting. I'm a huge advocate of hydrogen fuel, but I think depending on your driving, you need different things. So plug-in, hybrid, battery electric, and hydrogen. And it depends where you live and how close you are to hydrogen stations, etc.
Well, John, you were very vehement.
Just quick on the
But do you want to go into that and then Dean follow up, John?
We are doing similar research at Ford as a lot of our competitors. We don't have a display vehicle here. We don't go out and do ride and drives with them. We're not going to launch any time in the near future, primarily because we see so many challenges to the issues of infrastructure beyond where there are passionate people about it. So when you look at the different people around the country, and there are questions of infrastructure for electric vehicles, there are questions of infrastructure for propane, for natural gas, for hydrogen. There are so many choices, and there really are so many limited resources that we don't believe that hydrogen is ready for prime time yet. It's not to say that it won't happen in the future, maybe in the near future. But when we look at it, there are just too many challenges to overcome, and the financial aspects, going back to the business model for EVs as well, are so daunting on the hydrogen front that we're more than happy to be a fast follower rather than the pioneer that goes out there. So to my pioneering colleagues, thank you for blazing the trail, and at some point, Ford will follow.
Yeah, wearing my chairman of the Fuel Cell Hydrogen Energy Association hat, I would say that I respect what John just said, any automaker like that, but also at the same time, the key word is leadership. So if you say there's two vehicles that truly demonstrate the values that society wants, which is, of course, reduced dependence on oil, and of course, reduce smog emissions, but only two that really get you to the zero carbon potential, it's hydrogen fuel cell and battery electric, or all-electric drive. So you have to jump in and say, okay, we know this is a tough road to hoe. We know there's great challenges, but we didn't get to the gasoline infrastructure we have today in 10 years. We got to this over the last 100. So if we wait until one of these chicken eggs happen, it never happens. So everyone has to jump in and be part of the equation.
Actually a three-way race. Because plug-in hybrids, like I was mentioning earlier, can use advanced biofuels, next generation biofuels, and have equal or better. I mean, Ford's cars aren't the only ones. The Chevy Volt and others have announced that you're getting more electric miles on a plug-in hybrid than you are with a battery EV. And so just from that point of view, you're doing great on the carbon side, because people are probably having a second car, or they're switching with their wife or kids or something to get their extra miles with their battery. But going back to the hydrogen question, the key thing there is the very different infrastructure. So hydrogen has the traditional infrastructure, like a central refueling, like a gasoline station. That has been the bane of America's attempt to get off of foreign oil for 40 years now. I mean, at one point we had dozens of methanol stations. There was no business case. They got ripped out. I mean, we have 6 or 7 million flex fuel cars. Most of them, a lot of them are back in the Midwest, and hardly any ethanol stations to make that happen. So it's this, whereas EVs have this really cool advantage is you can kind of have a build-as-you-go infrastructure. I remember, President Bush and Senator Hatch, 10 years ago, holding up a 1-foot-long extension cord saying, this is all the infrastructure you need. And that's all I needed. I just plugged in at my house with 120 volts. I'm fortunate I work at Edison, there's electric vehicle charging there, and I'm getting 80–90% of my miles electric. So it's kind of a build-as-you-go infrastructure. And so you really don't, yes, there is some additional infrastructure you need, especially for the battery EVs, but it's much easier to launch, and that's why you're seeing states like Georgia and Texas and Washington and all these other places that don't have ZEP mandates do it, because it's such an easier equation. So I would argue that they're as equally as mainstream as the hydrogen car.
Can I just ask what time it is?
Yeah.
1:15.
1:15. Okay, we're going to talk for 5 more minutes, and then I'm going to open the floor to people in the audience who might want to ask questions. John, your former chairman, Bill Ford, said that for the longest time, the company was concerned with selling as many cars to as many people as possible, and now he's concerned about selling as many cars to as many people as possible. That was a quote that came in directly through your futurist, your staff futurist, Phil Connolly. Chrysler, General Motors also have staff futurists. I have no idea if the Japanese automakers or German automakers have futurists on staff, but if you do, are you able to share any of the information that they are in their crystal balls looking out 30 years and how it's impacting you now?
I can go first, and Sue, I think you were part of this up in Sunnyvale. Yeah, I'll just kind of share with the audience and fellow colleagues here, is that the cars can be around, I'm all for mobility and riding bikes and trains and metros, but unlike European cities, our cities are spread out. So there's not going to be this big gathering where people are going to move to cities. There's only really one centralized city here in the United States with New York and a little bit San Francisco. But so the population is growing. They're not moving to the city. They are to a certain degree, but the overall are still living in the suburbs and they still need that mobility. Okay. So from a manufacturer standpoint, before, let's say 30 years ago, we could invest in just internal combustion engine, and now the world has changed. We have to invest in, let's say, 6 different propulsion systems. So there's gasoline and all those, and John talked about all the different, making it so much better on the gasoline, the coefficient of drag, the materials and stop-start and everything else. So that's going to be huge. Then there's diesel. 50% of the cars sold in Europe are diesel by us and other manufacturers. So that's another propulsion. Then you have compressed natural gas with the fracking and everything else. Then you have plug-in hybrids. We and many others are coming out with that. The battery electric, which we've already talked about, and then hydrogen. But on all these different platforms, for us and others, it's too expensive. So we have to we partner with Ford and Nissan on hydrogen. We partner with Tesla on electric. We partner with on small engines and diesel with Nissan. So you have to pick partners because you can't put all your eggs in one basket. So that's what's going on. But I think in all those platforms, it's going to get a lot better. And hopefully the battery electric and hydrogen will happen for the environment, will happen the fastest. And that's more than just one OEM.
When we look at the number of vehicles that are on the road, roughly 1 billion today, and the projection is there'll be about 2 billion sometime in the next 25 years. For anyone who has traveled on the 405 lately, where are you going to put twice the number of cars? And as much as you think there are traffic issues in LA, try traveling to Bangkok or Tokyo or some of the cities on the Pacific Rim. We don't know what traffic problems are here. Beijing had an 11-day traffic jam. Take that in for a moment. 11 days. The problem that Bill Ford has brought up is that it's not just the automaker's business model that is being challenged by mobility issues. It's the fact that if we continue to produce cars the way we have been producing cars in the volume, whether they're electric, whether they're, doesn't matter what fuel they run on, we will face economic gridlock. If you cannot get goods to market and you cannot get people to where they are productive at work, then the economy stops. And that is much more likely to generate change than anything climate related, anything fuel system related. Economics is what changes behavior. So when we see that, we start looking at, all right, if we can't do it with individually owned vehicles, which are being banned in cities around the world, either directly or being banned by license plate metering or congestion charges or limited parking. I mean, there are all different ways you can ban vehicles. People still need to get from A to B. How are they going to do it? Part of it is shared ownership of vehicles. Zipcar, relay rides, peer-to-peer sharing. Part of it is autonomous vehicles. Vehicles who can drive themselves. Part of it is vehicle-to-vehicle communication, which is an enhanced type of autonomous driving. You start putting all of those things together, then you realize that perhaps we don't need as many vehicles on the road. That's very daunting when our business model at Ford is we sell cars.